Welcome to Sis to Sis. I'm Calandra,
I'm Latoya.
and today we have Miss Brownell here that's going to be talking to us about life planning. So, Miss Brownell, if you go ahead and introduce yourself for us.
Yeah, well, I'm Brownell Landrum. I am an author. I've written fiction and nonfiction, and I have living a kind of crazy nomadic life right now. That's kind of wild to talk about. And I have a background in corporate marketing and entrepreneurship, and like I said, I'm writing, and I just launched a novel trilogy last year, so it's all good.
All right.
Awesome.
Welcome.
So we're gonna jump right on in. So, what was the defining moment that set you on the path you're on today?
Okay, well, I'm as I kind of mentioned, I'm kind of living this crazy nomadic life. I was kind of embedded living in Colorado, and then all of a sudden my landlord raised the rent 50%. So that set me off on this adventure. And in the last year and a half, I've lived in Italy and Tunisia and Atlanta and been to all these different, been to Barcelona and like all these
Mm.
places and trying to figure out where I'm going to be when I grow up, if you will. So, sometimes you got to be pushed out of that off the cliff to find out you can fly or whatever the expression,
Yep.
and so that kind of set me on this journey, and it led me to write a short story that's semi-autobiographical last year that's free to everybody if they want it. It's called The End, a Love Story to the Universe. And that led me to this wild connection with what I call the upstairs, kind of guiding me along my path. And so I finished writing a novel trilogy last year. I'm working on a new project that I call the Heroes Playbook. That is my whole new thing that I'm all immersed in right now. So it's really fun.
Okay. So, how do you approach setting long-term goals, and what is your process for staying on track?
Yeah, as it's obvious that you can see, I've been around the block a few times and I've set a lot of goals in my life. And I have had a lot that didn't quite go the way I thought it would. And so I've kind of had to learn some fluidity, some connection, like where should I be doing and where should I be going? Kind of trying to find out because, what they say, life is happening when you're making other plans. And so I, used to be very, very directed on goals, and now I'm kind of like co-creating these goals, and trying to figure out, okay, where should I be next, and what does the world change, and what does the world need for right now? So it's I wrote a children's book, and there's a section in it that says we decide on our lessons, the paths we will take, awards we might go for, and mistakes we might make. But life
Mm.
isn't easy and not always fun, but easy is boring, like games always won. So it,
Oh, I
it
like
goes a
it.
little further than that. But it's kind of like, we set up our challenges and mountains so high to test our endurance and reach for the sky. So,
Right.
we set these goals, but they don't always happen.
They don't.
And so it's in fact, I recited that once at a failure conference. I don't know if you've heard much about failure conferences, but I failed enough times to ask you to be a keynote speaker at a failure conference.
Okay, no, I've never heard of that.
Oh
I
Interesting.
yeah,
haven't either.
it's a whole nother like level of success at failure
Huh.
kind of thing. But I mean, I think that's important to be prepared for that, and
Yeah.
to be prepared for changes and shifts. And there's always kind of like you've probably seen that meme that says, my plans were go this direction and then life went like this,
Hmm.
Um, and you got to be ready for that, right? Because
Right.
you learn sometimes more from those failures than you do from the successes, and that's part of your
True.
own personal growth.
Mm.
So, how do you handle setbacks and challenges?
I not always easy because I used to be so goal driven, and now I'm more like, okay, this is, there's a change, there's a shift. What do I do? And I go through what a lot of people go through, and want to have a tantrum on the floor like a toddler when things don't go my way. And then I look back, and in fact, my first book is about reasons why bad things happen. It's literally called Five Reasons Why Bad Things Happen. And within that, there's like a spinoff that I'm considering writing that I call Reverse Optimism.
Uh-huh.
And it's when you can look back and go, ah, that happened for a reason. And if I hadn't happened, this is where I am. So sometimes it helps to kind of keep in mind there could be some reverse optimism in the situation, and maybe you'll be glad that it did happen that way, even though when it's happening, you
You
don't.
don't understand it at the time.
Yeah,
Right. You look back.
yeah.
So what is one piece of advice you give to someone struggling to figure out their life direction?
I mean, everybody's got to figure that out for themselves, obviously. I think you want to do something that, I don't agree with this, oh, do what you love and the money will follow, because that, somebody go, I like to watch TV. Can I, can I make money on that? But I do think that, you want to find out what you really are interested in, what gets you excited, and also what you do well, right? And looking at your talents. And, I always say, like, if they say, if you had any advice to yourself when you were, however many years ago, and I say, be prepared to reinvent yourself. I
Hmm.
think one of the things in the mindset is people think that you got to know what you want to do and it's going to be what you're going to do your whole rest of your life. And I've reinvented myself, a number of times. And, you never know what something you learned from the past can direct you somewhere else later.
Hmm.
This thing that I'm working on right now, this Heroes Playbook, it's like I'm having so much fun doing it, like so much fun. And so, and I think people really will like this. Like, I think it's got some real potential. So I think you want to find something that has a market to it and has a potential or a job or whatever it is that wherever your goal, life would take you, and that you enjoy and that you can do for a while, and also know things might change. You might go a different direction.
What is something that you know now that you wish you knew when you were younger?
I think there's kind of two answers to that. I think one of them is that you don't realize, well, maybe three answers. The one is you don't realize that when you're younger, how much faster time goes by when
Mhm.
you get older. When
Mhm.
you're little, it's like Christmas is like,
Takes
in
forever.
November, Christmas is years away. And then you get
Mm.
older, like, oh, Christmas this year's already over. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
That is so true.
yeah, time speeds up so much. I think another thing is that when you're younger, you don't realize that when you're older, there's a part of you that's still all of those ages you've ever been,
Uh,
So they can't, as a younger person, you can't necessarily remember or have an idea what it would be like to be an older age. But when you're
Mhm.
older, it's like there's a part of me that's a 16-year-old girl still, there's
Yeah.
a 30-year-old, young woman there. Like all of those ages are still part of me. And I don't think a lot of people realize that when they're younger.
so true.
Okay.
True. So true. Toy?
You have you don't have anything else to add or
Um, I don't know. It'll come to me.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Well, thank you so much. So until next time, there is strength in sisterhood.
And supporting sisterhood.
Bye.
Bye.